Good morning and welcome to City Watch for Saturday, June 9th, 2018. City Watch is a watchdog program where we invite guests to share their perspective on social, economic, political, and cultural issues affecting all New Yorkers. Hosting today are Michael Paone and Jeff Simmons. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
You know, we have some terrific guests planned for today. Our first guest will be New York City Council Deputy Leader, Council Member Jimmy Van Bramer of District 26 in Queens to discuss the city's budget. Next up, we'll be joined by Yaneth Lobama and Brandon West from New Kings Democrats to discuss hashtag Rep Your Block, a community-led campaign to help everyday Brooklynites reform local government by winning a seat on the Kings County Democratic Committee, also known as the Brooklyn Democratic Party. And rounding out today's lineup will be Chris Wideelo, Associate Director of AARP New York, to discuss AARP's legislative agenda on a city and state level.
So we have some pretty amazing guests today. Exciting show. But first, I'd like to welcome Jeff to City Watch. This is your first time co-hosting. So for our listeners, tell us a bit about yourself.
Michael, thank you very much. And first of all, a shout out to Bakafam, who introduced me to the show. I've worked with her for a number of years on booking guests on the show, so it's wonderful to be here today in studio in this luxury setting.
You made it.
I am Executive Vice President of Anat Gerstein Incorporated. We do PR and communications for a number of nonprofits in the city, but at the heart of everything I do, I'm still a journalist at heart. I worked for New York One News, the New York Post, Daily News, Bergen Record, and for a while for New York City Controller Bill Thompson as his communications director, and worked on his campaigns as well as David Patterson's campaign for lieutenant governor. I have to tell you, I've been listening to City Watch for some time, and I'm very happy to be here today.
Perfect. So last week during our pledge show, we did a segment called Better Know Your Host, where we took some time as hosts just to interview each other and get to know, because I'm a new host as well. This is my third show. So I won't give you the whole interrogation process, but Jeff, I'm curious, just so we can get to know you a little bit better, what are you most excited about right now in life?
In life, I have to tell you, the thing that really is making me very happy this year is that I've been reading a book a week. It was my New Year's resolution.
Whoa.
I've stuck to it. I mostly read on the subways and get a lot of time given the often transportation delays. But I have to tell you, it's been really pleasurable going back and forth, reading political books, discovering new authors.
Do you speed read?
I don't speed read, but I have to tell you, the subway system gives me a lot of time to read.
Incredible. Well, you pass. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Jonathan, why don't you introduce our first guest?
Sure. Our first guest is New York City Council Member Jimmy Van Bramer. Council Member Van Bramer joined the council in 2009, so will soon be marking his 10th year on the council. He currently serves as the council's deputy leader and was reappointed to the council's budget negotiating team by Speaker Corey Johnson. He also chairs the council's Cultural Affairs, Libraries, and International Intergroup Relations Committee. And in this role, he has oversight for over 200 libraries and thousands of cultural organizations, institutions, and programs throughout the city. A lifetime resident of Queens, Jimmy's district spans Sunnyside, Woodside, Long Island City, Astoria, and Dutch Kills. And today he's with us today to talk with us about the ongoing budget discussions with Mayor de Blasio's administration, the campaign to support arts and culture in the city, and much, much more. Welcome to the show, Councilman.
Thank you for having me.
So, Jimmy, this is Jeff Simmons. It was really good to see you this week at the Taste of Long Island City, so welcome to the show today.
Thank you, and congratulations on reading a book a week.
Thanks very much. I'm going to wait for your autobiography, and I will put that on my reading list. So, first and foremost, obviously, there's been a good amount of press this week on the budget negotiations. Initially, reports were that there might be an announcement by Friday night. Now it seems like it could be as early as Monday. Give us an update on how budget negotiations are going between the City Council and the Mayor.
Well, first, I want to say it's been really terrific to serve in this budget negotiating team with Speaker Corey Johnson and this team. I've been on the budget negotiating team now under three speakers, Christine Quinn, Melissa Mark Viverito, and now Corey Johnson. And I think we've been a really terrific united team fighting for the progressive things that we believe in most. And obviously, you've seen all the reports, and nothing is final, of course, until the mayor and the speaker shake hands and we vote. And I hope that that'll happen this coming week. But I will say that, which has been widely reported, the speaker made fair fares one of the most important pieces that had to be negotiated successfully on behalf of the council. And obviously, the speaker and the council have come back with, I think, a very significant victory. And we are thrilled that the city of New York is going to make sure that those who are below the poverty line in the city of New York are going to have access to mass transit so they can get to job interviews and get to the places they need to go. Obviously, the cost of a Metro card shouldn't be a barrier to access to our society. So I think we're still negotiating, but I think there'll be other, significant victories that make New York even more fair and a better place for all New Yorkers. But I'm obviously, as the chair of Cultural Affairs and Libraries, continuing to fight for increased funding for libraries and culturals across the city of New York, and so many other things that I think all of us care about in terms of progressive New York.
So a few moments ago, you just mentioned fair fares. For our listeners, can you describe a little more about that and when this initiative could take place, when they might be able to see some savings?
Sure. Well, we have, as you mentioned before, a transit system that doesn't always work in the way that we want it to, but for the poorest New Yorkers, affording a Metro card, and particularly Metro cards that aren't discounted, because the folks in New York who have the least amount of money are often not buying those even lightly discounted monthly Metro cards. So that cost, the cost of a Metro card, a single ride, is prohibitive to a lot of New Yorkers who are living at or below the poverty line. And Fair Fares is going to make it so that those individuals, and by the way, there's something like 800,000 people in the city of New York who are living below the poverty line. That figure alone should make all of us pause and think about just where we are as a city. But what Fair Fares is going to do is actually, and what we hope this budget will achieve, is the allocation of enough funding, and that estimate, which is out there publicly, is in the $212 million place, will allow the city of New York to provide Metro cards for those New Yorkers who are living below the poverty line and who sign up, and we'll be able to provide them with Metro cards so they don't have to dig into what meager funds they have to pay for Metro cards.
So you mentioned some of the negotiation points and some of the priorities. I'm wondering if you can give our listeners a sense of what some of the sticking points are in the budget going forward. Give us the juicy stuff. What are people debating?
Well, I'm not really at liberty to provide the juicy stuff. I will just
Somewhat
say
juicy.
that I think. What's that?
Somewhat juicy.
I will say this. I think the speaker has been very forceful in talking about both Fair Fares and reserves. I think the council, as a whole, is an extremely progressive body, but also responsible. And we know that while we are right now in some solid and some would say even very good financial days, we also know that doesn't last forever. And so I I think the speaker has been fighting real hard to balance both our desire to spend money where it will make the greatest difference for those New Yorkers who are finding it difficult to get ahead, while also putting some money into reserves and making sure that we are having that rainy day fund that all big successful cities need. So I think that those are obviously two things that continue to be worked on, and obviously we are hopeful that there'll be, a successful handshake in the coming days, and look forward to a good result.
So, Jimmy, it's Jeff. You have chaired the Cultural Affairs Committee, advocated for more financial support for arts and cultural institutions, and recently you stood with a number of advocates on the steps of City Hall as part of the NYC Inspires campaign. Can you talk a little about that and what the goal of that campaign has been?
Sure. Well, I've chaired the Cultural Affairs and Libraries Committee all 9 years that I'm in the council, and it's been the honor and privilege of a lifetime as someone who worked for our public libraries before I got elected and who believes in the power of culture and the arts. So we have, over the last several years, increased funding for culture and the arts in the city of New York, and we're right now at record levels. The budget for the Department of Cultural Affairs in the city of New York is the highest that it's ever been. We've seen record amounts of capital funding for new additions and new buildings for our museums and cultural organizations throughout the city. But we also know that we can do more, and we can and should do more to provide particularly young people and those who are living in the outer boroughs, including my beloved Queens, access to the arts. So that means arts and education, that means after-school cultural activities, and so the New York City Inspires campaign is calling for $30 million in additional funding. Some of that is a restoration of one-time funding that we added in the budget last year. Some of it is new funding, but an additional pot of funding for culture and the arts so that the bigger institutions get more funding to do the great work that they do and to increase access to the arts, particularly for young people, but then also to our program groups, all of those small not-for-profit dance and theater companies that you see in Jackson Heights, Jeff, and so many other neighborhoods throughout the city of New York. Those folks really do benefit from even relatively modest increases in funding, so that they can continue to produce the work, and some of them can even get their own spaces to provide New Yorkers with, top quality cultural programming. New York City is the cultural capital of the world. Obviously, all of us say it. We're very proud of it. We've got to fund it like we mean it, and that's the work of the campaign. And obviously, as the chair of Cultural Affairs for the last 9 years, I'm proud to support it. And every single day, I'm in the budget negotiating team, fighting really hard for all the things I care about. But those in the cultural world and in the library world know that I am always talking about culture, the arts, and libraries.
So, Jimmy, on that vein, in 2017, you released the Create NYC Cultural Plan to enhance access to arts and culture in the city, and in particular to give New Yorkers a chance to play a greater role in selecting art projects in their neighborhoods. So how does this stand now? Any new developments, elements of this going into effect over the coming fiscal year?
Sure. Well, thank you for talking about it. The cultural plan obviously is something that I'm enormously proud of, and I want to shout out my colleague, Councilmember Steve Levin from Brooklyn. We worked together on this legislation. New York City was one of the only large cities in America that did not have a cultural plan before we passed the legislation in the City Council, and that plan was devised over a year of lengthy research outreach and discussions with neighborhoods all over the city of New York. So last year in the budget, we allocated $10 million roughly in furtherance of the recommendations in the cultural plan. And obviously a big part of this is about diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, because the point is to make sure that every single neighborhood has access, equal access to the arts. We want to make sure that everyone is benefiting from the wonders that we have in the city of New York. So we allocated those $10 million. There are several programs in there. One in particular is about disability access to the arts, and making sure that all of our culturals are thinking about this question. There's even some funding in the budget now in furtherance of that goal. But it is a living, breathing document that is informing the work of the Department of Cultural Affairs and actually informing the way we fund the arts. And so it is a good document. It is no document, no plan is ever perfect, but it is something that is real and substantive, that helps to guide how we think about and fund the arts. And I think that can only be good in a city that really cares deeply about the arts, but also cares about equal access to the arts, and making sure that every New Yorker, regardless of how much money their family has, regardless of their immigration status, regardless of the zip code they have culture and the arts in their schools and in their lives, because we know that when New Yorkers have culture and the arts in their schools, in their lives, there are better outcomes. We are better people. People are happier, they're more thoughtful, and they are expressing themselves in ways that can only be good for them and for the city that they live in.
So, Jimmy, we've got only a few minutes left. Yesterday, I noticed that you had tweeted the hashtag Free Pablo and shared a daily news story about the arrest of Pablo Villavicencio, the undocumented immigrant who was arrested by ICE agents in Brooklyn while delivering a pizza. Can you tell us your thoughts on this?
Well, we are all so upset about this era of Donald Trump and what it has meant for our country and our world. And what is tragic is that hardworking New Yorkers who are undocumented are really being hunted down. Families are being torn apart, and lives are being destroyed. And it's offensive, I think, to me, and I think to so many of us, that this man who was here, who was working, who was delivering pizzas, who has a wife and two young daughters, and in furtherance of delivering a pizza pie, was asked for a driver's license, which of course he cannot have access to. And because he didn't have that, he is then reported. ICE comes right away, detains him, and now is actively trying to deport him in a very aggressive manner. This flies in the face of everything that we as a sanctuary city believe, and I think all of us should rise up and be defenders of Pablo. We should obviously legislatively, as a state of New York, provide driver's licenses to the undocumented so that situations like this don't occur, but we should also, as a city of New York, be doing everything we can to prevent these deportations, and the number of people being detained is incredibly disturbing. How people are being tracked down and identified is really disturbing, and so it's really become, the human rights issue of our time, and the city of New York is such a great place, but we are a great place because of the immigrants who come here, like my grandparents and great-grandparents, to find a life that they seek, and whether they are documented or undocumented, to me, matters not when weighing whether or not someone has the rights of every person in this city and society. So Pablo is tragically just one case, right? There are so many Pablos out there, and this one has received appropriate media coverage, but there are so many more. And so we in the council are obviously talking about enhancing legal protections and providing attorneys, and we are actually actively doing that in terms of funding representation for those who are going through deportation proceedings. But it is alarming that someone who was doing their job and delivering a pizza pie could all of a sudden have their entire life ripped apart and destroyed in that one instance. And I think we have a system that's out of control, and I know that I'm mortified to know that this could happen in Brooklyn, in the city of New York, and we've got to do everything we can to stop it.
Jimmy, thank you very much for your time today. We'd love to have you back again, and happy Pride.
Thank you. Happy Pride.
Okay, with us now are Yaneth Lobama and Brandon West from New Kings Democrats and the Rep Your Block campaign. Yaneth has been county committee member for Assembly District 56 and Election District 58 since 2016 and is currently running for re-election. Yaneth has been doing social justice work locally and internationally for over 15 years. She's currently a trauma therapist and also coordinates a network of early childhood educators. This fall, Yaneth will begin her work toward a Ph.D. in social welfare at the CUNY Graduate Center. Yaneth was New Kings Democrats VP of Organizing in 2017. Brandon West is a longtime reformer and policy advocate from the good government world. He has experience directing an election oversight program and working to make government more transparent and responsible from the inside and outside City Hall. After spending years analyzing the city's budgeting process in the mayor's office and in the city council, Brandon now works in advocating and organizing nationally around voting rights and democracy issues with historically disadvantaged communities. Born across the river in New Jersey, Brandon has been a resident of the Park Slope area since 2009, and yes, he is a member of the Park Slope Food Co-op. Welcome to you both. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So, Brandon, give us an overview of Rep Your Block. What is it, and how did it come about?
Sure. So Rep Your Block is a campaign to get as many everyday Brooklynites onto the Brooklyn County Committee. So this is the Democratic Party here in Brooklyn, and this is essentially the lowest level of office you can run for. So Rep Your Block, it came out of New Kings Democrats, which I'm now president of, but it now involves a coalition of organizations, and it's about explaining the importance of the Democratic Party, what the lowest level is, what county committee is, what it does do currently, what it can do potentially in the future, and explain to them how to run for a county committee in their 2 to 4 block radius. So this is a process of explaining the importance of local politics to the people in Brooklyn and what they can do to be a part of it, so that we guide them through the process. We explain to them what petitioning is, we tell them what they have to do in order to do it, and then support them so that they can get onto the Democratic Party, which is about a 5,000 seat body. So Rep Your Block is about bringing people into the ground level of the Democratic Party here in Brooklyn.
So, Yaneth, political parties are very complex, and frankly, they can be a bit confusing. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the New Kings Democrats. What is the New Kings Democrats? What role do the local political clubs function in the bigger picture of party politics?
Mm. The New Kings Democrats has been around for 10 years now. We're very excited to be celebrating 10 years. It came about after there was a group of people who had worked on the Obama campaign, and they were energized after, the win, and wanted to focus locally on mobilizing people. And that's what NKD does, bringing local politics, making it accessible to everyday, residents. And to your question about political parties, it's precisely that, having access to issues, to electeds, being able to hear right in your home what's going on, and having the power to ask questions, get your questions answered, and actually get involved in, campaigns, and then, also running, such as, people we are encouraging people to do through Rep Your Block.
So, 2 to 4 blocks. is what you guys mentioned is the scale. That strikes me as hyper local. That's like really when you think about the Democratic Party, even like on a national level, this is really real for people. So, Brandon, you mentioned the Democratic County Committee as a part of that. What is that? How does it currently work, and what exactly about that are you trying to change?
So usually when I try to explain it, I tell people it's a pretty opaque system, so you're not going to get it the first pass.
Try us.
Okay, well, we'll give it a shot. So essentially, every county in America, in terms of party politics, they have a county party. And that's sort of what the larger parties are made of, a lot of counties and a lot of states. And the Democratic Party here in Brooklyn has two parts. It has district leaders, and there's 2 district leaders, male and female, for every assembly district, and then there's the county committee. So I kind of consider the county committee kind of like the House, and the district leaders kind of the Senate, and they have more control over who the party boss is and the chair. But the county committee is sort of the larger body, and there's about 2 to 4 male and female county committee members for every 4-block radius. So it's about 5,000 seats. And what they do, originally it used to be meet once every 2 years. You kind of just stand in a room, there's Robert's Rule of Order going on, and you have no idea what's happening, and they kind of rubber stamp what's going on within the party.
Sounds like the Park Slope Food Co-op.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit more hectic.
More?
Now, after a couple years of work, they meet twice a year, and they still, the party boss has a lot of control because they have proxy votes, but effectively, the county committee can decide when a candidate leaves midterm, like mid-office, who the party is going to endorse for the special election, which doesn't seem that important, but I think a third of the state assembly have been elected through special elections, so that can have a huge impact in local politics, and then also kind of setting the standard of what the party platform is and the general workings of the party. So if you want to improve the way government works, you kind of have to improve the way politics works, and this is how to impact the Democratic Party here in Brooklyn. So county committee is a confusing structure, but we think it's important to get people onto it.
You're listening to Michael Paone and Jeff Simmons on City Watch, WBAI New York, 99.5 FM, and streaming live at WBAI.org.
So, Yaneth, what does success look like for you? Describe the grand vision you're all working towards, and what will Brooklyn and New York City look like when you're done?
So before I answer that question, one thing that I wanted to add to Brandon's comment also is that special elections get usually won by a very small number of votes. And so that's why this is very important to get on county committee and have people know and have that voting power. And success looks like, those 5,000 seats being filled by people from all over Brooklyn that are representative of what Brooklyn looks like. Engaged citizenship, people being not afraid of running and well-versed and being able to speak about what's happening locally, and really engagement. That's what success, and transparency and reform and all of that good stuff.
So I'm curious about these open seats. I remember reading on your website that there's a large amount of seats that go unfilled. Why is that? What's actually going on there?
So generally, not a lot of people know about this system, and the district leaders are usually the window into the political party here locally. There are some district leaders and some clubs who think it's really important to have county committee really full and have a very engaged process and kind of focus on that. And some district leaders and clubs and their communities aren't as really focused on that. So there's a lot of areas where there's empty seats where they don't really have a major process to get people on. And then some places where it's pretty dense. So Park Slope, the 44th Assembly District 52nd are pretty dense in terms of participation, but there's other parts that aren't. So we think that if you're going to have a really deliberative body that's pretty open and brings in a lot of people, every seat needs to be full. So we're trying to work with as many groups as possible to get people from these communities onto it.
That was very, very a nice way to say that. So Yaneth, you are a county committee member, and full disclosure, Yaneth is actually my roommate. And technically, for a while I was registered under political party, you were my representative. So I'm curious to hear more about your journey. What inspired you to run? What's it like actually on the ground? What are some of the challenges and what's rewarding about it?
I love that question. Thank you so much. The challenge is that it's scary to run when you don't come from a political background. And why I ran was because I was involved with New Kings Democrats, and I was so ready to support everyone else. And when it came to, oh, now you get to run, it felt very scary. And women in politics, as you know, is a big there's a big gap between the number of men and women that are running in politics. So it really felt like I believe in this. I'm ready to support someone else. But then when it came to me running, it felt very scary. I felt supported by the people around me, and true to those statistics that you need to hear several times, women need to hear several times that they are the right candidate. I heard that several times. I remember you in the kitchen and we were having a conversation about this. I'm like, I'm being told to run. And he's like, well, you should run. I'm one of those. And I told you about that statistic. It's like it takes like five people to tell you that you can run before you can. And so the challenge was getting over the fear, but having the support of, a whole club that walked me through it, explained, and I believed in it. It's like, okay, all these seats are empty, and I know about this, and there's so many people that don't know about it, and that's why they don't run. And as a female Latina in the community, the pressure, that my own self-imposed pressure of like, I really need to be out there so that other people that look and sound like me feel like they can definitely do this as well. And it's been fantastic, and here I am, and that led to having then the belief in myself that I then ran for the VP of organizing at NKD, which I would have never thought of doing before, being a county committee member myself.
So I'm guessing some of our members, our listeners, may be inspired by this. Give us a sense of what does it look like to be a county committee member? Did you have to knock on a lot of doors? Did you get, were people yelling at you and telling you to go away?
No, it's so fun. You get to meet your neighbors and have really cool conversations. And there are some funny moments, like that one time that this woman in her towel and full face mask on opened the door and still signed my petition. You'll get some kids opening doors. You'll have neighbors inviting you in. It's really, really great. And hearing stories about people who've how they bought their home and what they've been doing in the community, getting to learn a little bit of the history. And it's only 3 to 4 blocks, so it really goes by fast. You're only spending a couple of afternoons and really getting to know your neighbors. So it's awesome. And then the actual responsibilities is you only have to go to 2 meetings a year.
That's not a bad deal.
Yeah.
So, Brandon, I'm curious, why only Brooklyn for the campaign? Do you know of, and are you inspired by similar efforts nationally or even globally?
So, well, there's a fair amount of work still to do in Brooklyn. We've always been, Brooklyn-focused club, and a lot of clubs are even more neighborhood-focused. So the fact that we're borough-wide is a rare thing, and right now I think we're the largest political club in the state. But there's a lot to be done. Even if you look to other boroughs in Manhattan, they have maybe more ways to plug into the party, and it took years to get a website up, and it took even more time to get the right forms on the website that we kind of hope that they put on the website up. So it's been a very long process because they have a different theory of sort of what politics and political engagement is. And I think that there is a lot of movement. We've been talking to a lot of groups in the other boroughs and throughout the whole state who want to realize what, this is actually how you change politics. You need to really start talking to the apparatus and getting as many people into that space as possible. So there's a lot of rumblings about interest in doing this kind of work in different places. And I think we're at an interesting time post-Trump that everyone kind of looks like, hey, what happens in D.C. matters, but also what you have the best options and the best people helping make those decisions when you get involved in the political party locally. So I think we're at the cusp of more people wanting to expand on this idea and bringing more people in.
In that vein, is this an innovative effort? Are you alone kind of in leading the way with this in the country, or do you have inspiration or drawing from other projects as well?
I think we have a fair amount of partners here in Brooklyn, but in terms of the rest of the country, I'm starting to hear of other groups who kind of started modeling it. I know some people kind of in Philadelphia kind of took our website a little bit and kind of reformed it and did it there. There's also, I think, the CC Sunlight Project, which is a more it's kind of used in other areas, but it explains and gives more information on sort of how county committee works in each area. So I think there's energy around it. And then honestly, our group wanted to bring the Obama organizing model to local politics. So I think that there's also people in Manhattan, Dems, who came from that same school. So there's like essentially coming out of the Obama campaign, there's like young people wanting to do local politics in different areas. So I think this is just a ramification of that.
So you mentioned the Sunlight Project, and this is for either of you guys. I'm personally always fascinated by the strong presence of civic tech in New York City. Civic Hall being a front runner and a kind of hub of a lot of great ideas and a lot of cool projects happening. How are you guys engaging technology in your efforts, and what do you see as the best use of technology to support your vision?
See, it's funny because I feel in a lot of ways this is a very not high-tech project. This is about going to neighbors and talking to them and getting signatures. That's like about as untech as you can get. And I think that that's actually a really important thing to do and take a step back. But it's also like we've created our own structures because we're campaigning and we're trying to get hundreds of people to kind of do this and like, explain information to people. And then we realized like, oh, we just created a van system like on our own, just in terms of like all the people who want to get involved in county community, where they are, and connecting them to other people and getting the right information and training them. And it's really like very engaged process, and we've used some technology and with some people giving us some ideas on how to use data. So we're kind of like reinventing the wheel a little bit, but in like a really fast and exciting way. So it's kind of fun at the same time.
How far away are we from me being able to vote using my phone? Let's just cut to the chase. Is that coming?
No, and I hope so. I hope it doesn't come ever. I mean, there's still a lot, and this is actually interesting in my job, is other stuff about technology and like the pros and cons of how we change our voting process. But yeah, I think we should keep things a little downgraded as much as possible. Yeah.
So we're about to wrap up. Brandon, how can someone listening get involved? What exactly happens after they click that Get Involved button? What does participation look like?
So for Rep Your Block, we're in the middle of petitioning right now, so if you like are really raring to go, we can find a way to put a slot in. But right now, people are already on the streets getting petitions for candidates. But if you sign up, you'll get a personal message, either a text or a phone call from someone from your assembly district to explain the process and kind of help guide you through it. And for our club, there's a lot of different things that we do or working on. We're working on a vision project to ask people what they want from the Democratic Party generally, and that's been the thing that we're doing. So effectively, either you connect to New Kings Democrats or Rep Your Block, you'll get a message from someone about your interests, and we'll guide you through what's going on and what you might be interested in doing.
So website?
So it's repyourblock.org and newkingsdemocrats.com. But repyourblock.org, sign up. It'll be a fun time.
Well, Yaneth, we're all rooting for you in your re-election campaign. We'll be following it very closely, even if we're not in your district. But best of luck with that. And Brandon, thanks to you both for being here and sharing your views with us here on WBAI.
No, thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
Of course.
Well, our last guest is Christopher Wideelo with AARP. Chris is the Associate State Director for Advocacy based out of the New York City office. And in this role, he's responsible for advancing AARP legislative and policy in the city's 5 boroughs and managing legislative relationships with the city, state, and federal elected officials across the city. Previously, Chris managed community outreach and education across New York City and the lower Hudson Valley, and spent 3 years in AARP's legislative office in Albany, managing all state and federal legislative campaigns in New York. Chris joins us this morning to discuss several of AARP's initiatives on a state and city level. Chris, welcome to WBAI. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning, Chris. This is Jeff. Before we get into specific funding questions, can you just give listeners an idea of AARP New York's membership?
I'm sorry, can you say that again, Jeff? I apologize.
Sure. Can you give listeners a sense of AARP New York's membership?
Sure, absolutely. Sorry. So AARP is a social mission organization. We have roughly 2.7 million members here in New York State. We have about 750,000 members that reside in the 5 boroughs. So, we have, I think, nationwide about 37 million. So we are the largest organization of our type. And our focus is to make life better for people as they age. We represent people 50 and older, and our goal is to allow them to live their best life possible. And so in addition to legislative and advocacy work, we also do different programming and events that are tailored to the 50-plus crowd. And also we have a nonprofit arm foundation that is, really does a lot of great work in the community to help, different local organizations do the work that they need to do to, serve the 50-plus.
Chris, this is Michael here. I understand New York's population is aging and is becoming much more diverse. What is the projected growth for that population in our region?
It is. And we've known that this is happening. The aging of our population, some people call it the graying of our population. I think the best statistic that I've ever heard recently is every day, and it's going to happen for about the next 10 years, and it's been happening for about a dozen years or so. Every day, 10,000 people turn 65 years old in this country. Right now, there is roughly about 1 million people 65 and older in the 5 boroughs, and that number is going to increase. We've already seen about a 19% increase in the last 5 years. That will push up to about 1.4, 1.5 million people by the year 2040. So it's going to be a very large cohort of the 65 and older population. When you look at the 50 plus, the number is even larger. So, we have to make sure that our state, our cities are equipped to handle the needs of an aging population. Though some people as they age typically have, different needs or things change in their lives, and we have to be able to help accommodate them if they are going to age successfully in place in the communities and, homes that they want to.
So on the line of statistics, AARP New York recently issued a report, Disrupting Racial and Ethnic Disparities, Solutions for New Yorkers Age 50 Plus, which looked at such growth and needs. So tell us a little about this report. What did it find?
Yeah, so I think in a very diverse city like New York City, people have looked at different issues around disparities, quite a lot. But nobody's ever really focused in on the 50-plus population and, what specifically needs to happen and what issues are out there and how we should be thinking about policy to address those concerns. So we really took a deep dive in a couple areas. One is livable communities. That's everything from transportation to housing and the things that you need to live in your community, economic security, and also health. And, looked at where there are, where we could be doing better, where people are not, where in our multicultural communities, people are not being, not getting what they need, and how we can help balance that out. So a good example was, pretty much up until this year, about 53% of people in New York State were, didn't have the opportunity to save for retirement through their employer. So there's no workplace retirement option for them. They could, certainly go down to a bank, but you're about 15 times more likely to save for retirement if your employer offers that. So in our report, and we have been working on this for a little while, was to set up a workplace retirement savings program that employers, it's an optional for the employer, optional for the employee, but the employer could offer this program. The employee could then has the option to contribute to their retirement savings where they work. In communities of color, the lack of access to this was even much higher. So looking for ways that we can help people save even just a small amount towards the retirement is going to, hopefully empower people down the line to have better control of their financial future. And so that was, I think, one example of how we, had an issue that we've been working on that we knew had an impact to, the multicultural communities of New York and, New York City as well. And was something that was found by the research that was done for our Disrupt Disparities report. So this is really the beginning of what we see as a long-term plan to look at disparities for the 50-plus population. So this year was our rollout with our initial research, but there's going to be so much more coming along in the next few years, and we will be tackling a lot of issues and based on some of the recommendations that were made.
So, Chris, earlier in the show, we had Councilman Jimmy Van Bramer on. He's part of the City Council's Budget Negotiations Committee. Can you give us a sense of AARP New York's budget priorities this season?
Sure. I think for the most part, our budget priorities are focused around the Department for the Aging's budget. We do believe that every government agency does have a responsibility to think about aging as they think about how they want to plan and they think about their budgets. Yes, DFTA is a major, Department for the Aging, DFTA is a major piece of keeping people healthy and allow them to successfully age. But, so many other departments also have this responsibility to think about when they do this, when they do their planning, how does what they do, how does the Department of Transportation, how does housing, how does public safety, how does that all intersect with aging? What are things that they need to be thinking about? This year, we did focus mostly on Department for the Aging funding, as I mentioned. That is really critical funding to help people age in place. People love New York City. They want to live here, and they need services. They need access to services to allow them to age in their homes and communities as their needs change. And so, the City Council and the Mayor last year really, they got together and they really showed a strong commitment towards aging services and really propped up a number of programs around home care, case management, respite care. So many unpaid family caregivers across the city, and they are providing incredible amounts of free labor to care for a loved one that otherwise somebody would have to be paid to do. And we want to keep them healthy and engaged and continuing to do this work, because not only is it just usually a better outcome for the person being cared for, but there's just not enough paid help to do this work. So, propping up programs that focus on respite care, giving those caregivers a break was certainly important last year. And so while we certainly made some significant progress, there's still work to do. As I mentioned, the demographic shift that we are seeing, the need every year increases. And so we still need the council and the mayor to really look at aging programs and continue to fund and increase funding in some particular areas to keep up with the need as it grows. So we have a good several different priorities. I think some of the big ones that as really budget negotiation talks, I think, are probably in their final hours at this point. We're making a budget agreement in the next, probably 48, 72 hours, something like that time frame. One of the areas is around home delivered and congregate meals. So for many people across the city, they rely on getting a home delivered meal. That is, the meal that they can count on, that comes to their door hot. It is nutritious. It is something that they might not be able to prepare for themselves. And for many people, that is something they look forward to. That is the meal of the day for them. And the reimbursement rate to these organizations that are providing this service has not kept up. So we're looking for a $12 million increase to the home delivered and congregate meal program to keep up really with the cost that has changed. The food costs have gone up, but the funding for the programs stay the same. So these organizations are doing a lot more with less, and we need to make sure that they are getting the proper reimbursement to provide this valuable service. Other areas in particular are around continuing to make sure that we keep up with case management and home care. So you need a case manager to get home care, and home care provides different services. It could be something like a home delivered meal. It could also be transportation. It could be somebody to come into your home to provide help with an activity of daily living. But these are the services that help keep people in their homes and communities. And if they don't get these services, they typically get sick and end up often on Medicaid. So, there's small wait lists right now for these programs, but we really want to make sure that people that need the service can access these services. So we're asking for really, I guess, a total of $3 million for those two programs, to keep up with the current need. And then another area is, the Department for Aging has been really working hard around making sure that our senior centers across the city, which is really a valuable resource across the 5 boroughs, where people can go and often access a lot of different city services, but also it's a great place for them to interact with others, and they can get a meal there, they can play games, they can attend programs, and we need to make sure that that these senior centers are properly funded and equipped. And so DIFTA has been doing a great job of looking at a budget that what they're calling a model budget that would put all senior centers at least at a base level of funding, as they're not always all funded the same. We would like to see that process expedited a little bit. So one of the things we're asking is for the funding that will roll out over the next 3 years to be actually fast-tracked, so we can get this happening sooner, because of the need, for the services and programs that happen there. And in addition, we're also, and this also ties into what we talk about when we talk about our disparities. There are some special needs senior centers across the city that are not funded by DIFTA. So we're looking for funding for 16 of these special needs senior centers. It could be anything from somebody who has an impairment, whether it's physical or mental or hearing or vision. Also, there are LGBTQ senior centers, and there are also senior centers that serve different populations, and they're very culturally focused. The organizations that are running these are doing this through their own funding, and it's a real strain on them to be able to provide the level of senior center services that a DIFTA senior service, DIFTA sponsored senior center does. So we would like to see, we're asking for roughly about $15 million for these 16 senior centers to get the funding that they need, because they are providing an incredible service to their constituents.
Great. So, Chris, we have a couple minutes left. On a state level, I understand you are concerned about the reauthorization of the speed safety camera program, which expires this summer. Tell us a little bit about what AARP's concerns are, and does this program go far enough, or should it go farther? What are you seeing there?
Yeah. Time is running out. I think we got another couple of weeks of session left in Albany. So the speed camera program has been incredibly successful. It needs to be reauthorized, and we will also for New York City, and we need the state legislature in Albany to do that. So we are asking not only for the reauthorization, but we and other advocates are saying we also need to expand the program. It is a way, speed cameras have been proven to deter people from speeding in neighborhoods. These speed cameras are located typically right now around school areas, and those schools are in neighborhoods where people like our members live. And so we believe we've seen the success of programs like Vision Zero across the city and how it's reduced pedestrian fatalities in our school zones. And we need to make sure that we are protecting the children, protecting the residents that live there, often who are older. So street safety is just good policy, and to let this program lapse, I think would have a catastrophic effect. Pretty much, people say, well, nobody really likes to get the ticket, but it's usually if you get one or two tickets, you're not likely to get a third one within a 2-year span. So it is a deterrent. People do start thinking and saying, wait, I need to slow down.
Thank you.
And that's really what we want to see.
So Chris, we're gonna have to wrap up in a sec here. We want to thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time. How can people learn more about AARP New York and get involved?
Well, I think the easiest way is to visit us online. Check out our website at aarp.org/NYC, and that will take you to our New York City AARP website, and you can connect with us as a volunteer, or get more information on what we're working on, or see all the different things that we have to offer people here in the city and across the state.
Well, thanks again, Christopher. Thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. Have a great day.
You too. And with that, another edition of City Watch has come to a close. Thanks to you, Michael and Jeff, for pulling together a timely and compelling group of guests. Thanks also to engineer Sean Rhodes, another flawless performance on the boards. And thanks especially to you for listening and supporting this program. We simply cannot do any of this without your generosity. Remember, if you missed any part of the show or just want to listen in again, the MP3 download is available at WBAI.org. Click on Archives and then City Watch. The show should be up and ready online in about 10 minutes, and it'll stay up for 90 days. That's it for us. Stay tuned for On the Count. Enjoy your weekend.